Okay, let's dive into this explainer. Today, we're looking at a truly fascinating concept from a text called The Alchemy of Failure, Reprogramming the Mind for Success. And it starts with a core premise that might completely catch you off guard, because it makes a rather bold claim. Handling failure is actually easy. I know, that sounds impossible, right? Usually, failure feels like the absolute end of the world. But stick with me here, because the way this source material breaks down the mechanics of our mindset is incredibly practical. It completely shifts how we approach setbacks. We've all heard the phrase, haven't we? Failure's a gift. Well, the text immediately calls out this toxic positivity cliche, and honestly, reading it is so validating. When you're in the thick of a real, painful setback, the absolute last thing you want to hear is someone cheerfully telling you it's a beautifully wrapped present just waiting to be opened. It's frustrating, it feels completely out of touch with reality, and frankly, it usually makes you feel worse instead of better when you're just trying to navigate a real-world problem. On one side, you have the classic motivational speaker, likely shouting about the sheer beauty of failure while lounging comfortably in a multi-million-dollar mansion. And on the other side, there's you, in the trenches, dealing with a very real, very stressful setback that has actual consequences. The source text adopts this great, sarcastic, knowing tone about this whole dynamic. It highlights how wealthy gurus constantly romanticize the myth of failure because they're completely insulated from its immediate effects. Meanwhile, the rest of us need actual, practical survival tactics, not empty platitudes shouted from a luxury balcony. Section 1. The Fake Gift of Failure. Moving past the mention-dwelling gurus. Let's move to and see how this builds in Section 2, Reprogramming Your Confidence Scale, the core method for bouncing back. Here's the exact definition of this tool straight from the source. Reprogramming is rejecting negative thoughts to stop sliding down the confidence scale and using vivid visualizations so your brain thinks it has already succeeded. What makes this so incredibly powerful is that it takes failure, which is usually this massive, abstract, emotionally overwhelming feeling, and turns it into a highly tangible metric. It gives you this confidence scale. And a scale is something you can measure, you can monitor, and most importantly, you can actively control. You aren't just at the mercy of your bad feelings anymore. You actually have a system. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how this overarching definition breaks down into 3 sequential, highly practical steps that you must actively take. Step 1, you have to consciously reject those intrusive negative thoughts the very second they appear in your mind. Step 2, by doing that, you put the brakes on and physically stop your slide down that confidence scale. You halt that dangerous momentum of self-doubt before it takes over. And step 3, you vividly visualize the successful next attempt. Notice the word vividly there. You don't just briefly think about trying again. You picture the win with such intense, specific detail that your brain genuinely registers it as if you've already achieved it. You're literally reprogramming your mind's expectations for success. Section 3, the real exam of life, a highly practical reframing technique. So the crucial point is the practical step of reframing your mindset for the next attempt. This is the grand resolution to your setback. When you fail, you aren't knocked out of the game permanently. Actually, scratch that. It's more like you're simply gathering the necessary, hard-earned data to prepare for the final boss of your hero's journey. It's all about the setup for what comes next. And this brilliantly illustrates the entire concept. The text lays it out perfectly. Failure is just a practice question you got wrong before the real exam of life. Just let that sink in for a second. Think about how completely that changes your perspective on making mistakes. If a setback is just a practice question, well, there's absolutely no shame in getting it wrong. The entire purpose of a practice question is to show you exactly where your blind spots are and what you need to study, so that you can totally ace the actual test when it truly counts. Which brings us to our final parting thought for this explainer. If failure is just a practice question, what are you visualizing for the real exam? The tools are right in front of you now. You know exactly how to stop the slide down your confidence scale, and you know how to effectively reframe a setback as mere practice. Now it's entirely up to you to paint that vivid picture of success in your mind. Thank you so much for joining me, and I highly encourage you to start visualizing that next win right now.